So, good evening. I am indeed privileged to say to be amongst all the members of the Madurai branch. The Madurai branch of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is, for me, very, very close to my heart. I've visited Madurai maybe about 20, 22 times during the last maybe 15 years. And Raja Rajeshwaran has been an excellent host to me. And whenever I come to Madurai, he makes it a point to ensure that I'm comfortable. He takes me to the temple, and the kind of hospitality Mr. Raja Rajeshwaran gives always, and the respective chairman, whoever is the chairman, I can only say that I always enjoy visiting Madurai. And of course, whenever I come to Madurai, I make it a point to go to Murugan Idli shop, the original shop where the very famous idli and dosa is to be, served. And of course, now that is there across the, Chennai and various places in South India. But it has originated from Madurai, if I'm not mistaken. And Raja Rajeshwaran has taken me there and shown me that small restaurant those days. I've seen that restaurant from the time it started. So I can say that Madurai is very close to me. I also see Mr. Ravi, my good friend, who is from Timmi Chetty and Company. I had the opportunity of working with him when we were the statutory auditors of Lakshmi Vilas Bank. I had just qualified as a chartered accountant, and Ravi and myself used to work on. Today, it's the Lakshmi Vilas Bank is beleaguered. You know the kind of problems that the bank is facing. But those days we used to audit the bank 90, 91, 90 to 94. I had the opportunity of working with Mr. Ravi, and thank you, Mr. Raja, for having introduced me to the members of the profession. And I would like to especially mention, talk about Raja Rajeshwaran. Raja Rajeshwaran has been a fine gentleman. He has contributed extensively to the Madurai branch. It's contributed extensively to the southern region. And over a span of 15 years, the kind of dedication, hard work he has put in for the growth of the profession in and around the southern, various branches of southern region is, I can say, we should applaud for the good work what he has done. And I still remember when he was the chairman of the southern region, when I was a president, we traveled to many branches. As he rightly said, we could get to know each other better, fine, simple, and humble gentlemen. And the regional conference is still fresh in my memory when Nirmala Sitharaman, the current finance minister, had come then to inaugurate the regional conference, and we had such a nice time with Nirmala Sitharaman also, and the kind of fellowship what we had, delicious food, so many more than 1,000, 2,000 delegates coming to Madurai. It's something fabulous, and I wish to compliment Mr. Raja Rajeswaran for the contribution he has made to the profession. See, ultimately, friends, as professionals, all of us are busy in our practice, are busy with our families, but representatives, like for example today, we have Abhinaya as the first chairperson of the Madurai branch. I wish to compliment Abhinaya for having taken the lead, because today many people are not interested to come forward and take leadership positions. The mere fact you have come forward and taken up leadership positions in the Madurai branch speaks volumes about your ability. You're extremely lucky, and God has given an opportunity to lead the branch. Please do your best. In spite of the pandemic, you're trying to bring people together to the virtual mode. And as Raja Rajeshan rightly said, the webcast was started during my year. That was the year when we launched webcast across the country. E-learning was started. And I'm happy that webcast and e-learning today is a new normal. So my compliments to Abhinaya. And my request to you is that you should continue to do the good work for the profession, for the cause of the members and students, and people like Raja Rajeshwari will always there. Myself will always be there to support you and see that you're able to do much more for the benefit of the community in and around Madurai. And Raja Rajeshwaran, as I said, has done tremendous work, and I'm happy that he is with us this evening. Many distinguished past chairmen also, I'm able to see them on the screen. It's really nice to see them virtually and greet all of them on this happy occasion. Friends, what I will do is now I'll share my screen, and then we will start with the presentation.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yes,
Abhinaya?
sir. It is visible, sir. Can go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Friends, now what I would want you to do is that, yes, all of us are, what you can say, focusing on traditional areas of practice, especially in a place like Madurai. I have interacted with a lot of chartered accountants who are in practice. And most of them are into traditional areas. They might be doing, statutory audit of companies, tax audits of partnership firms and companies, and bank audits. Then, you see them doing transfer pricing audits. And majority of them are involved in taxation of individuals, NRIs, filing of tax returns, GST returns, consulting in GST, consulting in income tax, traditional areas of practice. Yes, that is the right thing to do. But what is important, friends, is that we should just not be happy with what we are doing. We should look at ways and means as to how we can get into new areas of practice, whether we can start new verticals in our office. If at all we want to start new verticals, what is the way forward? Because it is not possible for you to do practice in all areas. A lot of new areas are opening up, and you should decide which is the area you would like to specialize or you would like to offer to your clients, and start offering those services to our clients. In a city like Bangalore, let me tell you, friends, the young CAs today who are setting up practice are not at all interested in traditional practice. I've interacted with a lot of young CAs who have set up practice in a city like Bangalore. They're into a lot of new things. They're into venture capital funding. They're into investment banking. They're consulting for companies on information and on IT consulting, and then they are also specializing in insolvency. So we find that the profession is undergoing a rapid change, and we find that the new generation chartered accountants are looking at new opportunities so that they're able to leverage on the opportunity that is thrown up. See, ultimately, all of us are looking at maximizing our revenues. We're also trying to see if we can offer additional services to our clients. And it is absolutely essential for us to look at new avenues. So my presentation will be focusing on two areas. The first one, we'll talk about the new opportunities that is opening up. And second portion of my presentation will be the growth strategies. How we as small and medium practitioners can grow, how we can take our firm to the next stage. Coming to the new avenues which are open for CA firms, I would just like to tell you that there are plenty of opportunities that are available for all of us. It is for us to decide what is relevant to you. And please don't think, Mr. Raghu, it is not possible for us to do this in Madurai. Madurai is a small place. It's a trading center. We don't have clients catering to these sort of activities. One thing I'm telling you, friends, with the internet, you are able to offer services to your clients sitting in Madurai. I have come across chartered accountants in Tirupur. I have come across chartered accountants in Coimbatore, offering services to clients in Singapore, offering services to clients in other countries. So it is not necessary that you have to offer services to clients only in Madurai. You have to look beyond Madurai. In Bangalore, let us say I am practicing in Bangalore, I have to look beyond Bangalore. And today we find a lot of CAs around the country are offering services to clients who are abroad. So it is not necessary that you have to service to your clients only in Madurai. That is number one. Number two, gone are the days where you used to have a chamber practice. The clients used to fix an appointment with you, and they used to say, Mr. Ravi, can we come to your office at 11 o'clock? Ravi would say, no, please come at 12 o'clock. The client comes to the office at 12 o'clock, you consult with the client, and then, those days are gone. Today, what's happening is with good telecommunication, good bandwidth, good internet, you're able to set up meetings on Zoom, irrespective of whether, even before COVID, I'm talking about, you can video conference with them. It is possible for you to reach out to them instantaneously. As a result, with the entire dynamics of the way you handle clients are changing. It is possible for you to speak to your client in Singapore on a Zoom call and try to understand what are the requirements and try to set up a team that can support them from Madurai. So what is important is that you need to look at the new avenues differently. So what I'll do in the next maybe 20, 25, 30 minutes, I'll be taking you through some of the new opportunities which you should explore. Many of these new opportunities are, you can say very interesting, and it's possible for you to get into that. Yeah. Now let's look at the current scenario. What is the current scenario? As I said, internet is becoming all invasive. The entire economy is going digital, and the government of India is also giving a big push to digitization. And we see that businesses are growing rapidly on the internet platform. Today, buying a tie, buying a airline ticket, booking a holiday is very common. And what is important for you to keep in mind is that, like if at all you want to, get into any new business activity, everyone is looking at ways and means they are able to offer their services and products online. So new business models are developing, and as a result of which we find online education has become a reality. Today, there are so many platforms like Biju, where classes are being offered online. Online banking. I was a director of Indian Overseas Bank. The kind of trust we gave for online banking today, you hardly go to the bank to get your passbooks updated. You hardly go to the bank to draw money. You just walk into an ATM and draw the money. You just have an online account and download your statement. So online banking, online education, everything has become very common. And today, housewives just pull out their mobile phones, book for a Uber or a Ola, and book for an auto or a car, and move from one place to the other. Thanks to the internet connectivity and the way new applications are being developed on the mobile platform, we find that the entire business has undergone a rapid change. We should accept that we're a digital revolution. And if your client is selling services and goods on the internet, on the web, you should be in a position to guide him, support him, and see that he's conducting the business the right way. Because your client is interested to know whether all the payments are coming into the payment gateway, and he wants to know whether the correct quantity of goods are shipped to various customers. And you, as an auditor, should provide the assurance to the client that everything in this digital scenario, in the new framework, is happening properly. So as a result of which, in this changing scenario, I can only say that digitization is increasing, and every other day you find a lot of companies joining the digital bandwagon. This is something which you need to keep in mind. To look at some of the new things that are opening up for the profession is artificial intelligence and reporting. What do you mean by artificial intelligence? Let us say you have a client, a manufacturing client who's got a unit in Madurai. He's got plant, what you can say, godowns across the country. He's got a platform to market his products online, and also he's got a brick and mortar outlets across the country. Yes, he requires MIS. MIS is critical. So what is happening? Let us say your client is using an ERP system. He's able to collate all the data, and he's able to predict what sales he would have the next 3 months, next 6 months, next 1 year. So with artificial intelligence, the whole dynamics of creating MIS for the management would change. So what I see, friends, is that artificial intelligence is something that can help you to predict your sales, predict your manufacturing. You're able to decide to what extent you have to produce a good depending on the sales that will take place. And artificial intelligence is gaining ground. And today, in artificial intelligence, our profession is not updated, you could say. From IFAC, International Federation of Accountants, we did a study as to the level of preparedness of our members on new areas like artificial intelligence, blockchain, robotic process automation. You will be surprised to know, when we did this study in various jurisdictions, one thing came out was that our profession is very poor in adopting to technology. So we find that we are not very keen to just happy with the basic level of technology that is there in our offices. What is important is that you need to invest in technology. You need to have state-of-the-art hardware. Number one. Number two, you need to have good software to carry out all your activities. If you want to do a AI activity, artificial intelligence activity, you need to have an AI tool for that. You need to invest in an AI tool. So you need to work with software companies. You need to have employees in the organization who are IT savvy. Then you can't depend on your article clerks to help you in developing AI tools. You need to develop a separate team that can support you in utilizing these AI tools for your clients. So what is important is that you need to invest in technology. I find that the investment in technology is inadequate. Today we find that firms are not investing in technology. So I always make a what you can say, a request to all the CA firms whenever I travel, whenever I speak to them, that please invest in technology. Technology will be the enabler for you to offer efficient services to our clients. So number one, you to invest in technology. Number two, to embrace technology. Number three is that to embrace technology, you have to improve your skill sets. Just attending a certification course on information systems audit or just doing a certification course on blockchain will not help you. You need to deep dive into this. You need to understand how exactly artificial intelligence works. When we talk about artificial intelligence reporting, I had the opportunity of seeing a tax utility in New York, where a presentation was made as to how artificial intelligence can bring about a complete change. Today, for example, if you want to know the latest Supreme Court decisions on, let us say, Section 43B of the Income Tax Act, what do? We go on the internet, we Google for it, and we pull out all the information, right? But with the use of tax utilities, which is having AI built on it, you just have to tell the computer, can you please give me the latest decision of the Supreme Court on Section 43B of the Income Tax Act? You have the entire information coming to you at the press of a button. So what I mean to say, you don't even need to type anything. You just have to speak to the computer like how you speak to Alexa. When you go home, you want to listen to some songs of SP Balasubramanian, you just need to say, that is how AI. How does Alexa picks out what you want? If you want the recipe of preparing jamun, you have to just tell Alexa, can you just give me the recipe for preparing jamun? So basically what is important is that all the tax utilities way forward will have artificial intelligence built on it. In India, some companies have started doing it, but yes, they are still not in an advanced stage, but there's plenty of opportunities for chartered accountant in the field of artificial intelligence. I was talking about analysis of credit reporting, analysis of accounts receivable. Today, accounts receivable is critical for every organization, and accounts receivable analysis can be done by artificial intelligence, analyzing key market trends, analyzing inventory. Inventory receivables are all very critical. Automating business processes, effective cost control, all these activities. When you step into the shoes of a business consultant, you can use artificial intelligence. Today, what is happening, friends, is that we generally restrict our scope to statutory audit, but many clients would require the services in not only statutory audit, in a lot of areas where they have a concern. Let us say a company is having a concern as far as its accounts receivable is concerned. A company might have problems in managing its stock. A company might have a weak internal process. I still remember when we did an assignment for a software company in Bangalore, they told me, Mr. Raghu, our current concern is travel reimbursements. We find that our travel reimbursements runs into crores of rupees. We want you to set in a business process so that we are able to plug in the leakages. And when we went about doing this, we realized that there are a lot of loopholes in the entire process of travel reimbursement. We were able to fix it. So what happens is you should proactively, as a chartered accountant, not restrict your scope only to statutory audit. You should step beyond that. Being a statutory auditor, you know that this company is having a problem in travel reimbursement. This company is having a problem in managing the stock. This company is having a problem in accounts receivable. That is where you step in and tell the client, hey, can I help you here? Can we build some artificial intelligence tool on your software to help you analyze the market trends, help you to manage your accounts receivable, help you to automate your business process, help you to control your costs. Today, you tell me in a place like Madurai, to what extent cost control is being followed by companies. Very few companies have a good, efficient cost management system. So artificial intelligence can bring about this change. It's very easy if the right kind of AI tools, plenty of are available even in India. If they are used, you can try to assess the clients in in some of these areas. Then coming to the next aspect, which I would like to talk about, is blockchain. Blockchain is gaining momentum. The first industry in India which will adopt blockchain, friends, would be the banking industry. When I was a director of Indian Overseas Bank, the Reserve Bank of India had asked us to set up a small group to see how blockchain would impact the Indian banks and how blockchain could be embraced by the bank industry. There was a presentation, by IBM on how blockchain would transform the banking industry in one of the sessions when I was on the board of IFAC in New York. And let me tell you, friends, entire blockchain would revolutionize the way the banks would function. Today, most of the banks are on CBS. I think all of you are aware of that. And all the CBS platforms are quite rugged. They have been used over the last maybe 10 to 15 years, and they're all doing well. And if you ask me what is the performance of the the CBS in India, I can tell you our banking automation is extremely good. Our platforms are robust and strong. And even if you see the bank platform that used by UK bank or banks in America, it's more or less on par with them. So what I mean to say is that it is absolutely essential for us to keep in mind that the banking industry will start using blockchain in a big way, because currently banks are investing heavily in technology. Today, you take any nationalized bank, they are having online robust platform for carrying out bank. Earlier, it's possible for you to download your bank statements. It's possible for you to transact on the internet, transact on your mobile, go to your ATMs. A whole lot of activity is now on the internet platform. There's no need for you to go to the branch. I think our earlier those days we used to go to the branch every other day to get our passports updated, but now we hardly go to the branch. So technology has brought about a reform in banking in India. But what is the next big thing that you would see in the banking industry is that blockchain would transform this to the next stage. There'll be a little leapfrog. See, today what is happening when we talk about cyber frauds, the banks today in India are investing a lot of money on protecting the transactions to see that there are no cyber frauds that are taking place. Today, internet banking frauds are increasing. Debit card frauds, credit card frauds, phishing, all these have become very common. And you'll believe it or not, every bank is facing this challenge where every minute, every 3 minutes, you have an internet cyber fraud taking place where the customer is losing 10,000 rupees, 15,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees. So this has become a big problem, because today what is happening is that cyber crimes are committed by professionals outside the barriers of borders of India. You have cyber criminals operating from Israel, you have cyber criminals operating from UK, and hardly our mechanism in India can support us. Let us say, as a bank, if I make a complaint, let us say to the police station in Chennai that this fraud has happened, let me tell you frankly, they are not in a position to help you. So cyber frauds are increasing like anything today, and the banking industry is facing and they're incurring losses on cyber frauds. So what is happening in blockchain's mechanism, the cyber frauds would be reduced substantially. Why it would reduce substantially is that entire information is stored in blocks. So the moment the server of the bank is hacked, the entire server need not come down. The information in that particular block gets affected, whereas other blocks remain intact. And in a blockchain technology, what is happening is all the transactions happening simultaneously can be viewed on the screen. Let us say you go to the bank teller and you present a check for drawing the cash. The moment you present the check, the lady finds out whether Mr. Raghu is having the balance. The moment she approves it, there's a lady sitting next to her. There's no need for you to physically, for her to physically pass the check there. She immediately approves it and you can draw the money in the second counter. So things are changing a lot. Blockchain will provide online real-time access to data, and this will also change the way we audit. Because if you are asked to audit a bank, let us say Indian Bank tells you, we want you to audit our head office in Chennai, you should be having the knowledge of blockchain. So blockchain would be the next thing, and Australia and America would take the lead. And very soon, according to me, India would follow. For this, what is it we need to do? Are we prepared? Let me tell you, friends, profession is not prepared. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India has launched a certification course on blockchain, but it's a very basic course. So if you are interested to learn more about blockchain, you need to take an intensive program, you need to deep dive, you need to understand what blockchain is, how it will impact you. And many institutes are offering programs on blockchain. You should choose and decide what is good for you. So what I mean to say is that I'm just throwing different opportunities that will come up way forward. It is for you to see how this would impact you. Coming to cloud accounting. Yes, today, no longer companies are storing accounts, the data on the servers in their office. They're locating it in the cloud. All major limited companies in the country are shifting the data to the cloud, as a result of which you're able to access the data sitting anywhere, at office, at home, or when you're traveling. Even the salesman can access the data, your MD can access the data. So entire data, instead of lying on local servers, are lying on the cloud. And this is something which we also as chartered accountants should think of, seeing how we can migrate our data in our offices to the cloud. Thanks to the pandemic, we have seen a lot of CA firms migrating the data to the cloud, especially in a city like Bangalore. I've seen migrated the data. You can have a private cloud, you can have a public cloud, you can choose depending on what budget you have. There's a need for you to migrate the data to the cloud so that you can enable work from home. Today, because of the pandemic, if some article clerks are not in a position to come to your office, or some partners are not in a position to come to office, they should be able to access the office server and able to carry out their work seamlessly. They should be able to access the tax filing software. They should be able to access Tally. They should be able to access the files in the office and carry out the work, effortlessly. So cloud accounting is becoming very, very important, and large size companies are moving to the cloud. And today, ITI, Indian Telephone Industries, is based in Bangalore, have invested heavily in cloud servers, because today the nationalized banks are afraid to go to the cloud because most of these cloud servers are lying outside India. So the Reserve Bank of India has very clearly told us, please don't think of shifting to the cloud. Maybe once we have our data servers within India, then maybe even the bank would shift their data to the cloud, or they can set up their own cloud networks. So the biggest advantage of cloud accounting is that you move all your data to the cloud, and you can provide flexibility for you to work. You can sit at home and work, like for example, Abhinaya wants to take a day off. She can sit in Mahabalipuram and access through her laptop all her office files. You can review the work without any. So cloud accounting is something that is gaining ground, and it is essential for us to understand how cloud accounting would change the way we audit. Today, if you ask me any of the big multinational accounting firms, most of the article clerks are working from home, and they're accessing data that is stored in the cloud. And even the clients are having the data in the cloud. So it makes it very easy, and cloud computing is gaining acceptance around the world. It is essential for us to understand how this will change the way we audit. Because once the data is shifted to the server, you need to access the data that is on the server and carry out an online real-time audit. And that is something which you need to develop the expertise. We talked about big data. Today, all companies, organizations are having large sets of data. So what is important is, how do you store this data? What is relevant? What is not relevant? How can this data become meaningful to the organization? And how this data can be churned out to give meaningful information management is something only a CA can do it. But big data analytics, if you see the advertisements in the newspaper today, it asks for CAs with specialized knowledge of analytics. If you are a CA with knowledge of analytics, you're able to get a good pay package. So it is absolutely essential for us to understand how analytics will play a role. And if you have the skill sets in analytics, you will have companies appointing you as a retainer, where they will tell you, Mr. Raghu, we want you to be our analytics auditor. We want to decide what is relevant, what is not relevant, what has to be archived, what has to be used for our decision making. So I find a lot of CAs in Bangalore specializing in analytics, data analytics. So all these are things that you can do it even in Madurai. It is not that you can't do it in Madurai. It is just that you have to decide to get into this. Analytics is a very big area for chartered accountants, especially if you are looking at jobs, huge opportunities. If you're a consultant, if you want to get into analytics practice, yes, a lot of analytics is there. Predictive analysis is analytics is something that the next thing where you predict with the information that is available. Then robotic process automation. What is robotic process? A lot of routine activity like punching of sales data, punching of purchase data, punching of expenditure data can be automated. You have a barcoded scanner where each of these purchase bills or sales bills will have that barcode that is generated when the bill is generated. You just have to scan it, and automatically punching of the accounting information is done even by a non-commerce guy. It's easy for him to just barcode, like how you go to a departmental store and buy so many items and put it in the cart, and the guy just takes the billing counter just takes the scanner and just scans the barcode. It is as simple as that. You will have this barcodes put on all the sale bills. So the moment you take the scanner and do this, automatically a sales entry is posted. So as a result of which, significant routine tasks are getting automated. And we see that as a result, this is a way for them to cut down. See how we can develop this RPA processes, how we can monitor it, and how this can be implemented in organizations. Again, as I told you, India is lagging behind in robotic process automation compared to other countries, but all this would catch up. It's a question of time where robotic process automation will become a reality. So you walk into any big company, they say, Mr. Raghu, entire sales is automated. Punching of data is automated. All our expenditure bills, everything is automated. So robotic process automation, you can help companies in implementing these processes, how they could automate, and then you can also review the performance and try to see that is working effectively. Then the next big thing, friends, is that IFRS. You might tell me, Mr. Raghu, we are not interested in technology. Technology is not our forte. Robotic process automation, you talked about analytics, talked about AI. No, we are not interested. Let us do something hardcore. Yes, I'm giving a huge menu card. You choose what you want to, because it's not possible for Abhinaya or Raja Vignesh to get into all these areas. You should decide what you are interested in. IFRS is a big game changer. How do you say it's a big game changer? Today, what is happening is that the entire world is looking at one set of high quality standards. And IFRS are principle-based standards which have been drafted easily and lucidly. And today, the financial statements are no longer used by investors in India. Let us say the balance sheet of Infosys or Wipro are all prepared using IFRS. And once IFRS is used in the preparation of financial statement, today, as you know, India took a decision, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India took a decision that we will not go for a big bang approach. Big bang approach is that making IFRS applicable to all companies. We decided we'll do it in phases. So initially we took the large size companies, then we took the mid-sized companies, then we took the small companies. And the last stage would be where it will be applicable to all companies. Let me tell you, friends, in countries like Pakistan, overnight they adopted IFRS. But we thought it is not a good idea. India is a big country and we need to converge with IFRS. We didn't want to adopt IFRS overnight, like how Japan and how Pakistan did it. We decided to converge. We decided that let us identify areas which are not suitable for our country, for our corporates. And then accordingly, IFRS was implemented. And thanks to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, they were able to roll out implementation with the consultation with the government, with the Ministry of Corporate in a phased manner. And let me tell you, friends, that everything is going fine as far as IFRS implementation is concerned. We call it Ind AS in India, and there are about 6 differences currently between Ind AS and IFRS. Once these 6 differences are ironed out, I can say our India also is completely IFRS compliant. That is, all the financial statements prepared by entities in India are IFRS compliant. Here I would like to say the banking industry and the insurance industry wanted to implement IFRS. The RBI rolled out a date. They said that we'll implement IFRS. IRDA said for insurance companies we'll roll out a date. But due to the dynamics of IFRS implementation, we found that it was not a good idea for the banks to implement IFRS. So the date has been deferred. When we converted the financial statements of our own bank, Indian Overseas Bank, into IFRS, we found that the results were not coming to our satisfaction, and that is what RBI also felt. So they've decided to defer the implementation of IFRS for bank and insurance companies. So what is important, friends, is that IFRS is gaining momentum. More than 125 to 130 countries are following IFRS. And for youngsters who have the knowledge of IFRS, if they are past CA, if they have the knowledge of IFRS, they can be employed in any country. They can go to Australia, they can go to Singapore, they can go to UK. And if they are having the knowledge of IFRS, they are easily employable. So also, chartered accountants who are having the knowledge of IFRS in India also can offer consulting services. You can offer consulting services to companies who want to migrate to IFRS. So there are plenty of opportunities for youngsters who want to go abroad, who have specialized in IFRS, and plenty of consulting opportunities for you in India if you want to consult in IFRS. But yes, you need to put on your study hat, study all these standards. As I said, it's a high quality reporting standard, principle based, drafted lucidly, and it's not very difficult for you to understand this new reporting standard. But yes, you need to make a beginning somewhere, and if you want to develop expertise in this area, this is the right time to do. This is a big picture. More than 120 countries are requiring preparation of financial statements in IFRS. So as I said, international opportunity. Let us say young CA in Madurai passing out of your offices, say, I want to take up a career. You should advise him to do a course on IFRS after CA, and then he can easily get a job either in any of these countries, whether US or UK or Singapore. It's very easy for him to get a country. And the demand for valuation experts would go up. Now the institute has started the valuation course. We have the valuation standards board. So the demand for valuation would go up because IFRS recognizes fair value. I think all of you would agree in the current scheme of things, the assets are valued at cost or market value, whichever is low. But with IFRS, it will be valued at market value. So there will be a huge demand for valuation experts once IFRS comes in. And as I said, chartered accountants will also be appointed by companies to help them in converting their finance statements to IFRS. So consulting opportunities there, career opportunities there, and also valuation opportunities are there. So these are the three opportunities which I see in IFRS. Friends, coming to the banking industry, there's so many new opportunities that is coming up for chartered accountants. In addition to year-end audits, concurrent audits, which is quite we have been doing for many years. And of course, chartered accountants play a very important role in trying to ensure that the banks are healthy. And today we find that chartered accountants are getting to new areas like forensic audit of NP accounts. All the nationalized banks today are appointing chartered accountant firms to conduct forensic audit wherever they're all forensic accounts. So you should plan to take up a forensic course on certification course on forensic audit. If you have a forensic audit is a new area. If you have the knowledge of forensic audit, you can get a lot of assignments in the bank industry. Let us say an account has become an NPA, they will appoint you as a forensic auditor. You go through the entire account and find out whether the funds have been diverted, if it has been diverted, for what purpose has been diverted. So it is possible for you to sort of offer your services in the field of forensic audit. So basically, the banks are also started utilizing the services of chartered accountants, not only in traditional areas, a lot of new areas. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of 2016, a large part of the insolvency professionals in India are all chartered accountants. I think Madurai also has got a lot of insolvency professionals. And this code provides for a forum to oversee the entire insolvency and liquidation proceedings for corporates, SMEs, and individuals. And as a result of which, the biggest beneficiaries of the bank industry, they're able to see improvement in the recoveries, and balance sheets of banks are getting cleaned up because of recoveries. And as a result of which, we find that the banks are very happy with the insolvency and bankruptcy code. So it is essential for you, if at all you want to specialize in insolvency and bankruptcy. Yes, we have the certification course, a huge opportunity for chartered accountants in this area, and you could be a successful insolvency professional. So it's for you to decide if you want to get into insolvency. As I told you, forensic audit today with frauds increasing. See, today in the bank industry, frauds take place in all levels: retail loans, mid-sized loans, big size loans. Frauds are taking place. Frauds sometimes are committed by the management in collusion with the bank officials, sometimes in collusion with the auditors. And as chartered accountants, if you are the auditor of a company, you should ensure that you are no way involved in the fraud. And today, the kind of fraud that is taking place in the bank industry is so high. RBI has made it mandatory for all the banks to go for forensic audit for all major NPA accounts. If an account has become an NPA, forensic audit is mandatory. But the banks today are not finding good forensic auditors. When they ask us, Mr. Raghu, can you provide us a list of all the CAs doing forensic audit? The number of forensic auditors are inadequate. But last 2 years, we find a different trend. More and more chartered accountants are getting to forensic audit. So what is the development that is leading to forensic audit? We find that the government investigations are increasing. And whether it's MCA, whether it's RBI, whether it's SEBI, government investigations are increasing. So as a result of which, government is asking for forensic auditors. Complex litigation. Because of complex litigation, you need good forensic auditors who can assist the banks, and prevention and risk management. So basically, forensic audit is gaining a lot of traction. Technology consulting and cyber attacks. Today, what is happening is that cyber attacks have become very common. Whether it is online media, insurance, telecommunication, e-commerce, online, retail. Because let us say in the e-commerce platform, a lot of transactions take place. Like as you're watching the webinar, maybe your wife or your son or daughter might be purchasing something on the internet, right? To that is the extent of which you find that transaction. You'll be surprised to know the youngsters in India place orders for goods at from 11 o'clock, 10:30 to 12. The maximum number of sales is generated. Can you believe it? I was reading an article how the youngsters today, the young generation, the young guys who are IT in IT company, how they 10:30 to 12, and after their dinner is over, they are placing orders on Amazon or Flipkart and trying to see how best they can get good deals. So today, what is happening? A lot of transactions taking place on the internet. Then, as a result, which it is prone to cyber attacks. So you, as a chartered accountant, should be able to provide cyber risk services like cyber strategy and management, cyber intelligence, analytics. So if a company says, Mr. Raghu, I am having an internet platform, I am offering my goods on the internet, I don't know whether all the payments are coming to me properly, whether properly goods are being dispatched to the clients. Can you give me an assurance that everything is fine? So you need to provide the cyber risk services. If you tell me, no, sir, I don't know, I am not competent to do it, he'll go to some other professional who has got knowledge of cyber risk and all that. See, today what is happening is clients are smart. The moment they know that you do not have the ability to conduct a provide a cyber risk service, he'll go to another firm who will be able to provide this. Currently, cyber risk services, cyber strategy and management services are being provided by, you'll be surprised to know, engineers. And whenever we interact with them and find out with them and ask them how many CAs are there in your team, they have a team size of 10 people doing the cyber risk in our bank. When I was on the board, a chairman of the audit committee, when I interacted with the vendor who's doing the cyber strategy and management, when I asked him what is your team size, he said 10 people are working on your bank. I asked him how many CAs. He said only one CA. And the CA was sitting there. I asked him a few questions. Let me tell you, friends, he was on the back seat. So what is happening is that our profession is not understanding that we are the most ideal guys to provide cyber risk services. If a cyber attack takes place in an organization, you as a chartered accountant should be in a position to say how we can mitigate the risks in cyber, how a good cyber strategy can be developed, how cyber analytics can help companies to reduce cyber attack. But hardly we find CAs having knowledge of all this. You can just figure out what is the state in which our profession is moving. We are not in tune with the changes that is taking place around us. That is the reason today all big companies appoint vendors, appoint IT companies, and these IT companies develop teams. They might have one CA and 8 to 9 engineers helping them in cyber attacks and all this technology. So what I mean to say, I see a danger for our profession in all these new areas because we don't have the expertise, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the ability. And as a result of which we find that we are running the risk of losing a lot of opportunities to other professionals. So it is essential for us to understand all this. And let me tell you, friends, it's not necessary that you should do it. Let us say you find a young guy in your office who's with you, who's got knowledge of technology, who's good at cyber risk. You should tell him, boss, why don't you do a course on cyber risk strategy, develop the expertise, and tell your clients, we can provide this service to you. We'll ensure that all the payments coming rightly to the payment gateway, all the product delivered are being delivered to the right kind of people. Give them an assurance to the management, they'll be very happy. Recently, a client had come to me. They were into online gaming, and then they said, Mr. Raghu, can you provide the cyber risk services? Even I had the same problem. We never had staff who were able to provide the cyber risk services. So this is something which we need to keep in mind. We need to sensitize ourselves that yes, we lack the skill sets in these areas, and there's a need for us to move into these areas very quickly. If we don't move, we lose out onto other professionals. Fintech. What is fintech? Fintech is financial services and technology companies getting together, and as a result of which personal consumer banking and financial products increasing, fintech is the new future. Today we have apps like Paytm, so many Beam or PhonePe and all these things. They're all product of fintech companies. And today you're able to manage your portfolios on the mobile phones. You can just buy and sell stocks. Then you're able to do portfolio management on your mobile phones. You can buy insurance. You can do a lot of things using your mobile phones. That is because of fintech companies developing apps finance apps are very good. And I see a lot of opportunities for chartered accountants in the fintech industry. The fintech industry in India is still nascent. It's growing fast. So let us say you would like to offer your services to the fintech companies. There are plenty of opportunity. This sector is opening up in a big way, because today what is happening is people want everything on the move. They want everything on the mobile. They want everything should be app driven. So you need to know how these apps work, and all the innovations in fintech. I think CAs are the best guys to support. So there's a great opportunity in for all of us to offer services to the fintech space. It's not a traditional service what you provide like audit and all that. You try help them to design the product. You help them to sort of come out with the product, test the product, and see that the product that has been a fintech product that has come out is working well. A chartered accountant is the most ideal guy who can work with a team of software professionals to develop fintech products. So finally, friends, what I said in the coming to the end of the first part of my presentation is that we need to understand what are the various opportunities that are available to us. We talked about blockchain, we talked about artificial intelligence, we talked about data analytics, we talked about cloud computing, we talked about cyber risk strategy, we talked about IFRS, we talked about so many things. Yes, it is not possible for you to get into everything. You need to decide what is the area you need to choose. And then once you decide, let me get into this area, you need to have a strategy, try to identify the right kind of resources, because you can't do everything. You need to look at some young guys in the profession who can help you. And once you adapt yourselves to what is available, and try to see that you're able to leverage on all the opportunities, let me tell you, friends, you will get a breakthrough. Breakthrough will not happen overnight. It will take time. Maybe 2 or 3 years. You need to put in that kind of effort to develop the skill sets. Then yes, you can confidently tell a client, yes, we'll help you in cyber risk management. We'll help you in artificial intelligence, AI tools. We'll help you in analytics. We will help you here. It's what is expected. Don't expect the traditional way, Mr. Raghu, we want you to audit our company. Mr. Raghu, we want you to file your GST return. All that is gone. Yes, that will continue. What I mean to say is that think differently. Think that you're a business solutions provider. If you still expect a client to come to you to incorporate a company, if you think a client will come to you to file GST returns, client to come to you to prepare, audit your accounts, I think we'll be, I can say that we'll be disappointed because our practice will not grow. You will have a very limited growth in your practice. You make an analysis of your clients. What is the kind of revenue they're giving? How much revenue you're getting from bank audit? How much revenue you're getting from tax audit? How much revenue you're getting from filing of tax return? How much revenue you're getting from? Have you done this analytics? Tell me. Have each one of us our own firms? Let us say we are doing a billing of 2 crores, 3 crores, 5 crores, whatever it is, maybe 50 lakhs. Have we done an analysis? How much is coming from statutory audits? How much is coming from tax audit? How much is coming from personal tax credit? How much is coming from miscellaneous services? Have we done it? No. So what is important is that we should apply analytics to our own firm and decide which is the sector you want to move. Whether if you find that consulting is giving you good money, yes, you should focus on consulting, and that you can decide only if you do proper analytics of your own billings. But we don't do it. Chartered accountants, being chartered accountants, very easy for me to say, fine, we'll get into this area. If you do analysis of your own billing, you will realize that one area you're doing extremely well. Like for example, in Bangalore, in my own office, I am a traditional practitioner. My father was a chartered accountant. I am a chartered accountant. We have a traditional practice. We do file tax returns. We file GST returns. We do tax audits. We do internal audits. We do everything. But yes, in addition to that, we do a lot of new generation practice also. Now we have developed a special vertical for startups because we found a lot of traction in startups in a city like Bangalore. What do the startups want? Startups want a wide range of services. So we decided, why don't we focus on that? So this I was able to, figure out why I should focus on startup. When I did the analysis of my billing, I realized this was my revenue from concurrent audits. This was my revenue from bank audit. This was my revenue from company audit. And when I found that this was my revenue from startup consulting, I found that this is an area, growth area. And we focus on that. We try to make an effort to develop that practice, make a person responsible for that, try to get new business. And let me tell you, friends, we were able to do very well. So it is for you to decide where you want to specialize. So it could be IFRS, it could be technology consulting, it could be fraud detection, it could be forensic. Insolvency is fine. Insolvency, so many chartered accountants are doing well. You'll be shocked to know their billings have increased 4 to 5 times after getting to insolvency proceeding. So you decide what is it you have to do in addition to what you're doing. Yes, your existing practice should continue, but can you add 1 or 2 more verticals is what you need to see. So this is the first part of my presentation. Now, what should be your growth strategy? Yes, it is the desire of every chartered accountant in practice to grow. Okay, so how do I grow? Today, I'm doing a billing of, let us say, 50 lakhs in Madurai. Can I take it to 75 lakhs? Can I take it to 1 crore? Or I'm doing a billing of 1 crore. Can I take it to 2 crores? Have we made any plan? Have we made? No, we never make. Absolutely, I've interacted with many chartered accountants. We don't make a plan at all. Okay, chalo yaar, we have done this much billing. We are happy with this. Let's continue to offer good services by default. So there's an absolute plan that is required for you to, decide. You have to budget what will be your revenue for the current year, how much you'll grow the next year. For that, what are the things you need to do? How much automation you need to do? How much investment in IT you have to do? What are the new resources you have to hire? Some amount of planning is required. So in the next maybe 15-20 minutes, I'll take you through a small presentation on growth strategies for small and medium practitioners. All this is out of my experience in practice for 30 years. I qualified in 1990. I put in 30 years of practice. And more than this, the experience what I've drawn from working in the institute, in the council, 9 years in the Central Council, 6 years in the Regional Council, 6 years in the branch, 25 years of work in profession. I've interacted with professionals in the cities. I've interacted with professional mafioso areas. I've interacted with professionals around the globe. I've met CPAs in Australia. I've met CPAs in Canada. I've met CPAs in America. I've spoken to accountants in Southeast Asia. A place like Singapore, mind-blowing. The accountants there are extremely smart. They are so good. They're very forward-looking. And next time, if you get an opportunity to attend an accountants conference, I would request and urge each one of you, because I've attended the global events around the world. Let me tell you, friends, if you get an opportunity to attend an accounting conference, you should attend a conference in Singapore. I tell you, it's fabulous. The kind of learning is fantastic. The many events that is taking place in Singapore every year, conducted by the local Institute of Chartered Accountants of they don't have the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Singapore. They have a different body. A lot of good conventions are conducted there. I request you to personally attend these conventions. It will be business-like. It will be 3 to 4 days convention. There'll be a lot of learning. It is very much different from the conferences what we attend in India. And Raja Rajeshwaran, I agree with me. He has also interacted with a lot of global accountants. The way they conduct themselves in our meetings in SAFA and CAPA and IFAC, we have seen how the foreign representatives representing the profession, when they come to India, they interact with us. They're thoroughly prepared. Even in the IFAC board meetings, which I used to attend, which used to be for 4 days, the meetings used to start at 9 o'clock in the morning. Let me tell you, friends, whether it is snowing outside, whether it is raining outside, 8:45, we had 16 board members. All the 16 board members used to come 8:45. They would have opened their iPads. They would have kept a cup of coffee next to them, wait for the meeting to start at 9 o'clock. Many a times, when you want to get out of the hotel, you'll go, oh, it's snowing out. How do I go? They're very casual. They just put on an overcoat, they take an umbrella, and then they walk to the meeting venue. They just hang the overcoat and get into the meeting. 8:45, they open their laptop. That is the kind of commitment what they have. And people from Japan, Korea, they have an issue with English. They come thoroughly prepared with their notes and slowly present their issues and concerns what they have in the board meetings. And even the way the meetings are conducted, when you want to ask a question, you just take your plastic name board and put it straight like this. Like for example, this is a name board that is there on the table. If you want to ask a question, you can place the board like this, and the chairman will provide an opportunity, you can speak. So everything is so methodical. 1 o'clock is a lunch break, we break at lunch. But what I mean to say is that when you attend global events, you learn a lot. That is why I suggested you should attend events at Singapore. Some of the events, accounting conventions I've attended in Singapore, I've learned a lot. The way the sessions are conducted, the kind of presentations that are made, the kind of researching, the breakout sessions that are there. It's a great experience. So you should get a global exposure. Only and until you get a global exposure, you know what is happening in the accounting profession around the world. So I have based this presentation, as I said, out of my experience in the institute, interacting with chartered accountants in the city, in the official areas, and chartered accountants around the world. This is how I have, structured. So currently, if you look at the practice in India, most of the CAs in India are sole proprietors, one-man show. So he does everything. He is looking at the chartered accountant, is involved in business development, he's looking at administration, client services, ensuring that things are happening properly in the office. So even if there's a problem in printer, you have a person, so the printer is not working, so UPS is not working. That is a kind of thing that is happening today in our country. Yes, many countries sole proprietors are there, even in America, even in Australia, even in Singapore. You either have the big accounting firms or you have the sole proprietor partners. Similarly, even in India, we have this thing. And the biggest problem for sole proprietors are insufficient time. They don't have time to update their knowledge, to conduct training programs for their staff, to build in new processes in the organization, to get new clients, ensure that proper delivery of services are happening. All this is difficult because of insufficient time. And 80% of the time is spent on clients giving you 20% revenue. 80-20 revenue is something which we have discussed many times in the council. Mr. Raja Rajeshwaran would agree with me. The kind of representations we used to get from official representatives like Raja Rajeshwaran telling us, sir, in Madurai, we have all small practitioners, but things are changing. And this is generally what is a profile of a practitioner in India and working after office hours. 10 to 6 is the working out, but we find a lot of CAs working even after 6. So this is a common problem that we find among practicing professionals in India, and that is something which we have to live with it. What are the myths in the CA practice? The myths is that there's a feeling that only large firms need proper systems. I don't agree with that. Friends, a small issue like audit documentation, you'll be shocked and surprised. This is one area where the small and medium firms are not scaling up. For example, let us say there's a disciplinary proceeding that is taken against you for having issued a certificate which is not correct, for having signed a balance sheet which is not true and fair. When we ask the chartered accountant in practice, can you provide us with the audit documentation? You'll be shocked and surprised. They would not have one single paper to provide to us. So why is it so? Because they don't have a system of audit documentation. The peer review manual talks about audit documentation, the need for you to keep the audit document. It could be digital, it could be digitized. No need for you to have physical copy of audit documentation. And you'll be surprised that the small firms do not have proper system. Like, for example, there's no proper audit plan. There's no proper method of archiving the audit documentation. My only request to all the practicing CAs here is that all these are very important, very critical. If you want to grow, if you want to delegate work to your juniors, you need to have proper systems in place. You need to ensure that all the audit documentation is kept properly. Because we do not know, friends, when we get into problem. The moment you get a disciplinary notice from the institute, and generally when we inquire into the case, the first thing which we ask them, can you provide us with evidence that you have done your job correctly? On the basis on which you have issued a certificate, whether proper evidence has been maintained by you. Frankly, friends, majority of the cases, the level of audit documentation is very poor. And Mr. Raja Rajeshwaran will agree with me that this we have gone about telling the members the importance of audit documentation. When you do a tax audit, when you do a bank audit, when you issue a certificate to the Central Excise Department or any government departments, even though we have introduced UDIN, maintaining proper audit documentation is very important, very critical, and we find that that is lacking in the profession, in the many of the small CA firms. The other myths in CA practice, networking doesn't work. Yes, the networking guidelines of the institute have not been a success, but that doesn't prevent you from networking. Let us say I am practicing in Bangalore, I have some professional work in Madurai. First person whom I'll think of is Mr. Ravi or Raja Rajeshwaran, because I know them well. How is it I know them? Mr. Ravi, I know him for 30 years. Raja Rajeshwaran, I know him for the last 20 years working in the institute. So this is possible by networking. I have known them because of my association with the institute. Similarly, let us say you are in Rotary. Okay, you are a Rotarian in Madurai, and for some reason you know a Rotarian in Bangalore. You have some professional work, you should be able to network with him. You need to spend some quality time to identify some CA firms in each city, try to keep in touch with them, work with them, give work to them, and they'll be able to give work to you. And this is known as informal networking, and the institute doesn't prohibit you from informal networking. You can always outsource work to another professional firm outside the city. But how many of us are doing this? Let us say a practicing chartered in Madurai, whether he has a networking partner in Bombay or Delhi, no. Today, what is happening? A lot of work is flowing from chartered firms from Bombay and Delhi to smaller places across the country. So there's a need for you to develop contacts with other CA firms, not only in Madurai, but in other than south, even up north, or even with CPAs abroad. So networking does work. So it's a myth to say that networking doesn't work. Mergers are not successful. Again, this is the norm of the day. We find a lot of small firms getting together, merging together. There's a myth that it doesn't successful. There are positive points and negative points, but yes, mergers are taking place. And the fact that CAs are good in taxation and audit is gone. Those days it was there, but today chartered accountants are too smart. They're a good entrepreneur. They're good investment consultants. They're good investment advisors. They can do multiple things, and all of you would agree with me that they're not just, we are moved out of this traditional tax and audit mold. So what are the challenges being faced by all of us? I am also a small and medium practitioner. So what are the challenges being faced by us? Retaining client today. Today, the new generation clients are not loyal, unlike the traditional clients who stick to you in spite of, let us say, inefficient service or the poor quality of service, because they know Raja Rajeshwaran well. They don't mind, okay, I know Raja Rajesh has been handling our income tax matters for 15 years. But the current generation of clients no longer loyal to you. The moment there's inefficiency in your service, they move to some other chartered accountant. This is a challenge. And the young generation thinks differently. Okay, so it's absolutely essential for you to keep in mind that is how critical it is important for you to retain the client. And training of office staff. Let us say you have about 15 article clerks. How much time do you spend on training? Do you train them as a partner of the firm or a proprietor of the firm? How much quality time you're spending? It is absolutely essential. Until unless you spend time on training your staff, your quality of work will not improve. Today in our office, being a Saturday, every Saturday we have training program. Today we had training to our staff on some of the new accounting platforms, like on ClearTax we had a training program, on Zoho we had a training program, on QuickBooks we had a training program, because we found that some of our clients were using QuickBooks. So our staff, some of them were aware of it, some of them were not aware of it. So we had an intensive training program in QuickBooks. Then ClearTax was another software which we found was useful, and we had a train. So we need to invest in training. We have to put them together and ensure that the proper training program takes place. And I think for this, the partner or the proprietor should take interest. Until we train our staff, have formal training programs, I don't think you'll be able to upskill your staff, and the quality of work would suffer. So we in our office have a plan. Every Saturday we spend the entire day. Sometimes during tax season we don't do the training program, but otherwise every Saturday we have a full day training program for our staff, and we find that is very useful. The next challenge is that competition from Big Four. Today we find that the mid-size and the big-size Indian accounting firms have lost a lot of their clients to the Big Four and other multinational accounting firms. Not only on statutory, even internal audits are getting away, and we find that 3 or 4 of our key clients are generating, contributing a good lot of revenue. You lose them to the Big Four because they say that investors want Big Four to be the auditor. So there's a challenge that is being faced. Level of fees, yes, clients don't pay you much. Let us say he's paying you 50,000 rupees. You tell him, sir, 3 years has happened. We request you to make it 75,000. He'll not listen to you. He'll say, no, Mr. Raghu, it's not possible. What I'm paying you is adequate. So getting higher fees from the client has become very, very difficult. Forget the pandemic. I'm talking about a scenario when before the pandemic. Also, getting a good increase in fees becoming very difficult. Yes, CP. To what extent we members are updating their knowledge? You'll be shocked and surprised that just about 20 to 25% of the membership are attending the CP programs regularly and properly. The balance 75% are just getting credits. They're not updating the knowledge, and this is a big danger for the profession. I was just surprised when one of my one person known to me, he was not aware of the UDIN. What is this UDIN, Mr. Raghu? He's just totally lost touch of what is happening in the profession, but he still signs balance sheets because he has someone to get everything and he signs. So what is important is that mandatory CPs helps you to understand what is happening in the profession. So what are the changes that are taking place in practice? The traditional practice is dwindling. Because today with automation, going to the income tax department is not there. I remember 87 when I joined my articleship. I used to go to the income tax department. 90 when I qualified as a chartered accountant, I spent so much time visiting Queen's Road department. We had about 4 or 5 departments, income tax, because all that is now gone. I'm sure all of you also would have gone to the income tax department many times. All that is gone. Today we have CPC and TAT returns are getting processed online. All your rectifications are being done online with faceless assessments coming. Even that will reduce faceless appeals happening. All that will undergo a big change. So where is the question of you spending time in the income tax department or in the sales tax, GST, everything is online. So as a result of which you find that a lot of time is now available for you to do a new type of work. So we have a dwindling traditional practice like the traditional going to the income tax department, representation, assessments, all these are undergoing a change for dwindling traditional practice. More automation because of online filing of tax returns, TDS returns, we have tracers, GST, and everything has become automated, less of paperwork. And we need to understand business, very, very important. You need to understand whether the business of the client, what you are auditing, you should understand the kind of business what he's having. Let us say if he's in the business of online gaming, you should understand whether you are whether it's legally permitted, whether it's possible for you to certify balance sheet using the online gaming. These are some of the things you need to keep in mind, and shift from compliance related services to value added services. See, today, whether you like it or not, client comes to you and tells me, Mr. Raghu, I wanted to file your GST return. I can't say no to him. I have to do it because he's my client. It's a new legislation. His accountant is not having the expertise to do GST, and I should give him that comfort. Don't worry, we will help you. But that's a compliance related activity. There's a need for you to move from that. The moment you empower the accountants, the moment you empower their finance team, you should move out of that kind of activity and get into value-added services like consulting on GST or representation, litigation. That is something that's very important. And the other change that is taking place is that increased clients' awareness. Today, with the information boom, client knows the same minute you come to know. If the deadline for filing of tax returns has changed, he will know the same time you come to know. Client relationships are becoming more professional and formal today. Need for succession planning. How many of us as CA firms are looking at the next succession, who will take over the office? Need to upgrade office infrastructure. I've already said we're not investing sufficient amount in technology. Let us say because of the pandemic, I saw a lot of CA firms moving to a work for WFH facility. They invested in IT infrastructure. They went for robust servers. They went for firewalls. They went for remote access and all that. But till then, no one did it. When it came, tightening the noose around your neck, people started investing in high quality IT infrastructure. Single window service, clients want everything under one roof, GST, funding, what you can say, raising funds, audit, everything under one roof. That has become the concept. Multi-location service, Mr. Raghu, you're having an office in Madurai, you have an office in Chennai. That is again becoming the requirement of the day. Services to global organizations. This is a new chain that is taking place where you staying in Madurai can offer clients services to client anywhere in the world. Today in Bangalore, we are catering to a lot of clients situated in various parts of the country. And most of these clients are having startups in Bangalore. And for these startups, we provide end-to-end services other than audit. So you should be prepared to serve global organizations. And the way forward is you need to network, as I said, mergers and specialization. The ICA guidelines for networking have been laid out. For some reason, it has not been a success. Not many firms have adopted this networking route. The institute is planning to come out with new guidelines, but as of now, networking is permitted by you. As I said, you need to tie up with firms, not only within India, outside India also, and you should make an honest attempt for this. And whenever you travel, let us say to Bombay, you should make it a point to meet 2 or 3 CAs known to you. Try to see if you can work together, and that will help you. Merger of firms. Today, let us say Rajarajeshwaran wants to merge his firm with Ravi, whether it's possible in Madurai. Ravi is practiced in corporate law, Rajarajeshwaran in direct taxes, whether they can do it. Yes, it's possible. But yes, a lot of issues that are there. The scale of fees would vary from firm to firm. Salary structures would vary. Fear about losing client. At the moment I come to know that 2 of them have joined together, the client might run away. Loss of independence and flexibility. If you're a proprietor, you can come whatever time you want. You can go whatever time you want. Go. You can draw whatever amount you want. Whereas if you're a partner, you're answerable to the partner. All that is loss of independence there. Power and profit sharing mechanisms play. Personal expenses cannot be debited to the firm. Even otherwise, it cannot be debited. But yes, There's a limitation on drawing money for your personal expenses and compensation for immovable property. Let us say Radha Rajesh is having his own building, Ravi has got his own building, whose property will be used, how is compensated, all that is there. What are the merits? When 2 or 3 firms get together, reduce overheads, and then they can share the tensions and burdens. Quality of service will improve because, as I said, client can come to one location and get all the services. Better quality of office infrastructure, better quality of training, a better image can be produced, you can handle large assignments, and there will be a synergy in operations. What are the demerits? Clash of work cultures, loss of clientele, staff redundancy, and the integration of different staff policies, and fees also would increase. Once the overhead increase, the fees. So these are the merits and demerits for merger. So how do we go about developing our practice? Yes, we know what are the merits or demerits of networking, merger, what are the new areas of practice. How we develop our practice, we need to start to delegate work. Clients should not reach out to you for every small thing. How much TDS deducted for a particular transaction? You should not say, Mr. Raghu, how much TDS should be deducted. You should create a system in your office. There's someone responsible to attend to all the client calls. And if any client calls you, you should tell the client jolly well, please don't disturb me. Speak to so-and-so in my office and he will clarify to you everything. Because we get clients, call some clients disturbing you for small things. Especially the youngsters. People should develop the systems right now and try to see that the client doesn't disturb you for small things. Creating teams for assignments. You should absolutely essential for to create the right kind of team within the organization. Then providing limits, time limits for administrative work. Then checklists for all type of audits that you're conducting. Routine queries should be answered by responsible people. Client awareness and using automation for billing. We've already been doing. A lot of time should go on reading, clearing your office, code of conduct for article clerks, periodical system for reporting, training, hiring quality manpower is very, very important. You just can't depend on article clerk. You need to have high quality manpower that can support you. So how do you enhance client value? This is something which each one of us are doing. People like me, myself, Raja Rajeshan, whether it's Abhinay, all of us are doing it. So we need to constantly keep in touch with the client. In the pandemic, you should, yes, talk to the client, find out what are his concerns, what is his problem. This is something which many chartered accountants don't do. Improving client contact is important. Sending useful articles to clients, helping clients with your contacts. If you have a good contact somewhere, if it can help your client, why not? It might not give you any money, but gives you immense goodwill. Build a personal relationship with the client. Participate in social activities. Offering you have a good, nice boardroom. You can tell the client, why don't you use my boardroom for your interviews? Volunteering to attend clients' internal meetings and using technology to improve turnaround times. So what are the things you need to withdraw from salary services that are not attractive? And you be an out-of-the-box thinker so that you can earn high fees, improve the speed of billing and collection, and trying to see if you can accommodate part-time staff. That's what we proposed when I was a president also. We said that women CAs, the moment they get married, they have children, they're not able to continue the profession. But if there's a neighborhood CA staying close to your office and she is ready to work for half day, I think we should encourage flexi working for such women CAs so that they can come to your office for half day, render the service, other half day they can work from home. All these are very, very important. And by doing this, two things will happen. You're providing an opportunity for that lady to come and support you in the office. And number two, your cost of employing that lady, the lady member CA also would be less because you're working on a flexi basis or a part-time basis. So these are all the things that you need to do enhance client volume. So basically, friends, what is important is that for you to grow in your practice, you need to do multiple things. As I said, you have to enhance client value. You have to do a lot of things, network with other CA firms, merge with other CA firms. And once you do all that, yes, you can deliver outstanding quality service to your clients, provide maximum satisfaction, and of course, you'll get financial success. These are some of the thoughts which I thought I will share with you. And if any questions are there, I would be very happy to take the questions.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your 30 years of professional experience with us. Thank you once again. Now I have released the audio controls to all of them. Members can interact with Raghu sir directly. Now I request the CA Ravi sir, past chairman of MPSARC, to share a few words. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Past President Raghu, for sharing nice words on me and recollecting the working what we had. It's almost 3 decades back. Okay, it was really very, very nice of you. To put it in the lighter vein, I strongly believe I have grown by 3 years, 3 decades but I could see you got younger by 3 years from that time onwards. Okay, it was during mid 20s, late 20s, we were working together. Okay, but I could see now. Okay, you've gone down. Okay, you've become younger, 3 years younger. That was very nice of you, Raghu. Okay, I still recollect. Friends, I could share this very frankly. At the time when we were working together, the way in which I was working, Raghu used to just tease me, you're using the computer as a glorified calculator, okay? And he was giving me a lot of leads and inputs, how to make use of the Excel. It was 3 decades back, because at the time we were not that tech savvy, and it was Raghu who was guiding me, and we were working together. And I feel very proud to share these few informations. Okay, Raghu, as usual, your address has been very, very innovative, very, very impressive, giving us innovative ideas and making us to come out of the shell, to break the shell in which we are there. Chairman, it is for you to note, and even the managing committee members should periodically organize meetings, okay, of this kind. Maybe we cannot get Raghu down to Madurai, but we can catch him on the webinar at all the times, and we can ask him to share his experience, which will help us to understand what is really happening in our industry, okay, and how we can elevate ourselves to serve the business and the industry to which we are catering. Thanks a lot, Raghu. Thanks for all your nice presentation. One small doubt which I have, a few of the services which you were highlighting it, will it not be hit by 144 of the Companies Act?
Yeah, see, as you know, as you have to configure your practice, keeping in view the code of ethics of our profession. We have defined what management consultancy services are. Now we permit you to set up a management consulting company, and we'll also stipulate what are the services you can provide. But yes, if you are providing all services, you cannot take up an audit activity. You should be very clear about that. Let us say you're working for startups and you're providing accounting services, payroll services, compliance services, fundraising activities. You can't be an auditor for them. So you should be clear as to how you want to configure your services for the client. And it's very well possible. But yes, definitely you have to keep in mind the requirements of the Companies Act, the requirements of the code of conduct of the code of ethics of the institute, and accordingly you should go about.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So any other members wants to interact with Raghu, sir, they can interact by unmuting themselves.
Maybe President, Past President, I will come again. Okay, I was under the genuine impression, okay, we are rendering services right from pin to plane to my clients, to all our clients. But I could understand from your presentation, there are a lot more of services to which we need to equip ourselves to render it to our clients. That was very nice of you for highlighting those services.
And Ravi, it is not possible for us to get into all areas. See, I have given you a menu of various services. For example, Abhinaya might be interested in IT consulting. Maybe Raja Rajeshan might be interested in something else. He might be interested in insolvency, and you might be interested in some foreign. So everyone has got a passion, everyone has got an interest, and you should choose the area of your interest. And there's an opportunity in every area. Forensic, as I told you, there's huge opportunity, not only in the banking industry, even outside the banking industry, there's a great opportunity. And the Institute of Chartered of UK are having intensive course on forensic audit. If you want to update your skill sets, they have excellent courses, and you can even go to London and prepare for these, attend the classes and get a degree from there. So it is for you to decide how you want to deep dive into that particular topic and develop the expertise.
During your association with the institute, during the 15 years, you have visited Madurai nearly 22 times. But after the regional conference, I think you have not visited Madurai. So you should have it in mind and come down once, so that we'll have the pleasure of giving the hospitality.
Maybe once the pandemic is over, Raja has already told me that I have to come. I promised him I will come. Definitely, I have a desire to come. I will come, because Madurai is not very far from Bangalore. I will definitely come.
We'll plan one physical meeting in that case. Okay.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I request CA Manimegalai Madam, Treasurer of Madurai branch, to propose vote of thanks. Over to you.
Abhinaya, madam.
Yes, yes, sir.
Just 1 minute. President sir, extremely thankful to you. You have the same spirit of 2014. Even I have not seen 1% reduction in your spirit. Your lecture was extremely good, highly practical, very, very useful to the younger members especially. And you have spoken your mind very clearly and a lucid manner. It will be quite useful to all the participants today. Thank you very much. Thank you.